Hey kids, grandkids, or whoever else is listening. It's a nice sunny day in Utah, middle of April, and Jennifer and I decided to take a little field trip. She is driving, and I am still on disability. I've just unable to drive. I've got my fingers being worked on. Hopefully I don't drop the phone here. They're trying to straighten that finger out. Actually, it was pretty straight until I went into physical therapy this morning, and the physical therapist got a hold of it. Now it needs to recover. Anyway, wanted to take you to one of my heroes is Loren Stoddard, and I would like to go to just visit his headstone, his grave. His birthday's coming up in a couple of days. I think I'll release this YouTube video on his birthday just to honor it. But just wanted to introduce you to him. I've called this channel our Great Greats, and I was doing that having it in mind of having kind of spotlighting some people that are real important to me that I think are pretty great people. This person is an amazing person. He's actually a hero of World War II. He's my mission president, and so just honor him. Want to go pay my respects, and so we are off to Salt Lake. Say hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
All right, we'll talk to you in a minute. Hi. So we're approaching Salt Lake on our little field trip, and Jennifer is tired of me being a backseat driver, and so I'm going to share a fast little story about a memory that I have of Loren Stoddard. I was probably 19 or 20 at the time. We were having a zone conference on my mission, and he was in the middle of a group of maybe 20, 30 people sitting in the chapel. I was speaking and I was giving this talk. I still remember what I spoke about and some scriptures that I used. The reason why I remember that, I believe, is because President Stoddard was really engaged with what I was saying, and he was making eye contact with me and smiling and nodding and paying really good attention, and that meant a lot to me as a young man with not a lot of experience. Just having him give me the impression that it was a good talk, and it probably wasn't, but my memory of him is really strong still to this day, and that's just kind of the person that he was. He cared about people, and he made a big impact on me, just in that one moment by supporting me. And so that's one of my many memories of him. Looks like we're about to get off the freeway, so maybe I'll just share one more memory of my mission president, Loren Stoddard. And this one was around Christmas time. Well, I was on my mission, obviously, but we had made arrangements with a mall there in the area to go in and perform, to sing some Christmas carols, just to entertain the shoppers. And Loren, or President Stoddard, he was leading us, and there must have been maybe 15 or 20, probably 20 or so of us, elders, and we sung a lot of the traditional Christmas songs. And then for the final song, he wanted to do something a little more like proselyting, I guess, missionary-ish. And so he had us sing "The Spirit of God." And he's like, okay, you've got to sing as loud as you can. We want everyone in the whole entire mall to hear us. And so we just belted that out as loud as we could. And to this day, every time I hear the song or sing the song, "The Spirit of God," I think of him, and I think of that experience of trying to share the gospel through music. And so that's another little fun memory that I have of him. Right, we are here. We just pulled into the cemetery. It was a wonderful drive. Took us about 45 minutes. Traffic was great. Not a cloud in the sky. Perfect little commute. Took about, like I said, about 45 minutes. So we are in the cemetery. Now we're going to use the Find a Grave app. And someone has already gone to his grave and they tagged it with the GPS coordinates. So it'll be super easy for us. We parked right in the middle of the cemetery. On the Find a Grave app, it shows us exactly where the headstone is. So we'll just walk right over to it. This app has been one of my favorites. Jennifer and I started using this program probably 7 or 8 years ago. It was new at the time, and no one had actually gone around in the Salt Lake Cemetery and tagged all the GPS coordinates for the prophets. And so we thought that would be a lot of fun. And so we went out one day and just got the map off the internet of where all the prophets were. We went and looked them up. It took a while to wander around to look them up, but when we found them, we marked them with the GPS coordinates. So it'll be real easy for whoever wants to find it if they do use the Find a Grave app. Anyway, we're off to find his grave. So we found his headstone. The GPS took us probably 20 feet away. I blame it on my phone. I've got the cheapest phone in the world. I'm sure it was nothing to do with whoever marked the tag. But anyway, here's his headstone. And you'll see on there, it says he is recipient of the Silver Star, Purple Heart, Prisoner of War, Distinguished Flying Cross. Was in World War II, Korean, and Vietnam. He was a pilot. Like I said, he is my hero, but I'm kind of honored just to have known him. But this is his headstone, and I've been looking for information on his wife, Helen, and I don't see that she has passed away yet, which is fantastic. Love these people. While we're here in the cemetery, I wanted to read in my journal my first journal entry about the Stoddards, and this was what I wrote August 11 of 1981. And it was funny, every single one of my journal entries starts off like this. Today started off at 5:30 when both alarms went off. Then I showered and ate some breakfast. That's very important. I want everyone to know that I showered and ate breakfast. But then we left for a zone conference at 6:45. Elder Warren and I listened to the 17 Points of a True Church on the way down. We got there and talked to all the other missionaries in the zone. About 20 of them. I talked to everybody, by the way. When it started, President and Sister Stoddard were there, and their assistants were there. We first had a sing-along. We all stood around the piano and sang primary songs, like the Golden Plates and Give Said the Little Stream. Then we started the conference with the business, and then the assistants spoke, and then Sister Stoddard spoke. Very good talks. The spirit was real strong. Then we played a game, the baseball game, with the discussions. I didn't do too bad. Then some ranch members fixed us dinner, corn on the cob, hillbilly style. And I believe we were in West Virginia at the time. And I made a comment that the dinner was really good. Then President Stoddard talked. Then we all bore our testimonies. The Spirit was so strong. I expected an angel to appear or someone to start talking in tongues. I felt so warm inside. It was so cool and so spiritually uplifting. It was great. I almost couldn't take it. It was so much, I almost couldn't take so much of it at a time. It kind of hurt. I was burning inside. Then, after we bore our testimonies, we closed with singing the mission song, which makes me feel proud to be a missionary. And then I just went on and wrote about the rest of the day. But that was my first interaction in my journal about the Stoddards. It obviously meant a lot to me at the time and still does. I wrote a whole entire page, about that one meeting. And the big part of it being such a special meeting was my experience with the Stoddards. And it sounds like also bearing our testimonies. But that was my very first journal entry with the Stoddards. Okay, we are on our way home. We found the headstone and enjoyed the afternoon. I was thinking about one other memory that I had. If you notice on the headstone, it mentioned that he was in 3 wars and that he was a POW. I didn't really realize that while I was serving with him. It was actually the night that we met in the mission home for our kind of a meal and testimony meeting before we flew off the next morning to come home. But during the meal, the topic came up that he was a prisoner of war. He shared a little bit about that. He didn't talk a lot about himself, but he did mention that he was shot down and a few of the crew members were killed. He was the captain flying a B-24 Liberator, and he was, after 4 days floating in the ocean, he was picked up by the Japanese and taken to the prisoner of war camp, where the guards, he didn't have a lot of good things to say about the guards, but he loved the people. There was a big difference between the Japanese people and the guards, and he made that clear. But he told one story while he was there that was kind of funny, how he or one of the other prisoners had snuck into the supply room where all the supplies were being sent that were for the prisoners that were not being shared with the prisoners. The guards would keep it for themselves. And the prisoners were starving. And when he was liberated, he weighed below 90 pounds. I want to say 88 pounds. But he mentioned about this story that he enjoyed telling, I think, how they got this chocolate while the guards weren't looking, and they shared it with the other prisoners, and they enjoyed this treat. And actually, maybe that's why I like chocolate so much. But I do remember the story. He said they ate the chocolate, and before the guards could do anything about it, it was gone. But they got punished for it. But he said it was worth it. And so I did remember that story. And once we get home, I'll get on the computer. There's a few documents that I'd like to share with you too, that go over some other the amazing things that he did while he was in the service. He really was a hero, military and spiritual for me. And so I am going to leave you with that, and I hope you stick around a little bit longer. Thanks. Bye. Hey, good morning. It's 2 days later after we were in the cemetery. This is from my house here in Utah. This is my backyard, and it's snowing like crazy. Just a few days before we went to the grave to pay our respects to my mission president, we woke up here to 5 inches of snow. It was just pretty amazing that the weather cooperated. I guess it was just meant to be. That I had a few hours to kill, and the weather was perfect, and so I was glad to get down to his grave just before his birthday. So I just want to show you that. Okay, I am back inside where it is nice and warm. Thank you for sticking with me this long. I'm going to just try to quickly finish up this section about how he is my hero as far as interacting with him on my mission. And then I want to get on to how I discovered and learned about his military experiences. Wow, what some stories! Can't wait to get to those. Just to finish up, I'll show, if my kids and grandkids are still listening, how you are related to him. If we go into his account and family search, click on View My Relationship, you'll see our common ancestor. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over this, but it shows he's my wife's 8th cousin, once removed. I wish I had a few pictures to show you of him. There are some here in memories. I have just one picture that was taken at the airport right before I went home. I cropped this at the few other missionaries. I was lucky enough to be standing by him, but this is President Sister Stoddard, myself, right before I took off. And so with that, I am going to just leave with one thing I want to just finish up this mission segment with is our mission song. And don't worry, I'm not going to sing this. This is our song. I don't know the missionary who wrote this. Word on the street was it was written, I don't know, 10 or 20 years before I came out. So it's been out for a while. Anybody who'd served in Pittsburgh in the 70s, 80s probably sung this every time we got together as a group with any kind of meetings. I'd sung this quite a few times with President Stoddard. And the last time I was at their home, the mission home, right before I flew out, we had our testimony meeting, and then we sung this song. He is such a good leader. He had total confidence in us. I won't go into the whole story, but he called me we were at a state conference, and he called me out of the audience just to come up during his talk and relate an experience that I had. And for him to have confidence in us young elders and sisters, what a good leader. He taught by example and word. I love listening to him. His talks were amazing. His testimony was real strong of the gospel and of the Lord. I will sing. No, I won't sing. I'm going to just read the mission song. I had it memorized. I could probably still do most of it, but I'll finish up with this. O ye ministers of God's own light, let your purpose so shine bright. Within you dwells salvation's key. Share and teach that all might see. Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh's mission's the place we were called to serve the Lord. There are souls that lie in darkness still, searching for a spiritual guide. You can within their lives fulfill precious truths that will reside. Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, mission's the place we will seek out the honest in heart. Go and give to them salvation's key, instill in them desire to ask for truth in the things they see, that their lives you will inspire. Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, mission's the place we will teach of the kingdom of God. We will gain a love for those we teach through all our work and strife, but with that love and the goals we reach, we can share eternal life. Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, mission's the place we will proudly serve the Lord. President Stoddard led by example and total commitment to his calling and as mission president to us, and everything in that song pertains to him. So I'm going to just finish this part off, and I'll be back in just a few minutes, and we'll start with his why he is a hero for me with his love of the country. Thanks for listening to this point. Okay, I am back to let you know how I discovered that my mission president was a war hero. And so just to start with, at the very beginning, some of you who know me may know that I like to run. This is a picture of some of the bibs from some recent races. But I was reading in a book about a runner. His name is Zamperini. He ran for the U.S. On the Olympic team. He went to Germany, and he was the race that he was running in the audience was Adolf Hitler, and he did so well. He kind of surprised some people, and Hitler wanted to meet him, and so he went and met Adolf Hitler, and he became kind of famous. And I was reading this book about how he became in the Air Force, and eventually the plane crashed, and they were in sea, and he floated in the sea. And I can't remember all the details, but it seemed like it was for 40 days or 30. It was a crazy long time, and they lived on a few fish that they caught and had some rainwater to just barely keep him alive. When he was picked up by the Japanese, he weighed like 65 pounds or something like that. And then he was taken to this prison camp. And because he was famous, he wasn't executed like some of them were. But they put him in this camp, and the book. Here's the book that I was reading. It's called Unbroken by Loren Stoddard. But it describes all these things he had to go through while he was in camp, how he was tortured and that. And then his parents were actually told that he had been killed. And maybe 6 weeks later, I believe it was, he goes on the radio, and this is after he'd been in prison for a year and a half. And he goes on the radio, and let me see if I can find. Okay, so he reads the statement that he had prepared. The Japanese wanted him to be kind of give some propaganda, and he wasn't going to do that, but he finally was able to prepare this statement, and he read this on the radio, and it just surprised everybody that he was still alive. But it says, "Hello, mother and father, relatives and friends. This is your Louis talking. Through the courtesy of the authorities, here I am broadcasting this personal message to you." I would encourage you to read this, read the book. It's amazing. But he goes on in this radio address to give some clues to his parents that they would know that it's him. And then towards the end, he wanted to send the messages out to some other families that their sons were still alive. And so I'm reading along here, and it says, "Since I've been in Japan, I have run into several of my old acquaintances. You will probably remember a few of them. The tall Marine William Harris from Kentucky is here and enjoying good health. Loren Stoddard." And then when I read Loren Stoddard, it's like my chin dropped to the floor. I'm like, no way, that's my mission president. And things started to click, and I just became fascinated with the information that I was learning more from about my mission president, Loren Stoddard. And so I had to reread some of the book, and from the perspective of what my mission president was experiencing. And it just made me really appreciate what he had gone through, knowing that he had gone through similar experiences that Louis Zamperini had. And so I was just so curious to learn more about him. And I thought, the first thing I'm going to do to try to discover more information about my mission president is go to Family Search. I knew he had passed away about the same time my dad had, in 2008. And this was now about 2013. And so I knew that his information would be public, and I pulled it up here, ran through, some of the information that we've got on him, read his obituary. I went to his memories, looked at some pictures, read some stories, and just discovered a lot about him. And I'll probably spend a few minutes going through some of these medals that he had earned, which were some wild things that he had to go through. And so I'm going to spend maybe a few minutes going through what he did to earn some of these medals. But that's how I initially came to realize that my mission president had done all these heroic things by reading about him in a book. All right, let's get going on this. Today is April 14, and It is his birthday. He would have been 104 today. I went on and I noticed he was born in Burley, Idaho. I absolutely love Burley. Got some relatives up there. Great people in Burley. But to get started with what I discovered from his military service, I first started here, and let me just say right off the start, there's no way I am going to be able to do justice to everything that he has done. This is just going to highlight a few things. What I did, I first came here, browsed through his memories. His family did some excellent work here, adding some stories and pictures. I noticed this shadow box of awards. It caught my eye, and I recognized a few of these. I recognized the Purple Heart and the Silver Star. I had to look up some of these other ones. The Silver Star is what I'm going to just touch on real quick right now. And he got this by his service at Pearl Harbor, December 14, 1941, when we were attacked. He was stationed at Hickman Air Force. And what had happened, well, everyone knows the story of it. But what he did, and I just went on Google and pulled up some pictures of Pearl Harbor, the Air Force Base is what I searched for, and it came up with this. If you can see this picture here, this is where he was, and what he did without being told, he just volunteered. He just saw what needed to be done, and he did it. He ran and jumped in one of these airplanes. He was a pilot then. He jumped in the airplane, and under attack with all these bombs going off, things burning, he moved the air. He got this airplane out, or one of these, I don't know which one, but he moved it to safety, which it was like in the line to kind of like dominoes from how I gathered. It would have continued to go down the line and just destroy more airplanes and the hangar and that. But he jumps in, pulls this airplane to save that and the other airplanes, the hangar, and so that's what I gathered from this description here that I read. It's all online if anyone wants to go further into it. But he was awarded the Silver Star for that. What I found interesting, and so actually here's and what you have to do to qualify for the Silver Star. That's while engaged in action against an enemy of the United States, you are, well, it tells you here, the Silver Star is the third highest military combat decoration that can be awarded to a member of the United States Armed Forces. So that's what he did to earn that. And what I thought was interesting, let's see if it's back here in his memories. Let's see if I thought I had a link here for it. Oh, there we are. And so this is in his memories. He didn't even tell his family about it. There's this pretty amazing article. It's like mother learns of son's feat in the news. And so he did all this without even writing home and telling his folks. It looked like the Army was trying to track down his parents, and they were having a hard time. And another person in the town got word of it and was able to help the Army in the right direction. And so that is how his parents learned of what he did. And I guess there's two ways to think about that. Maybe he's just caring about his mom and dad and didn't want them to worry about him, or he was just modest. But anyway, that's how he earned the Silver Star Award. I would like to take just a minute and talk about Loren's family. I think 1944 would have been a pretty tough year for his parents. So this is the mission history of when Loren was shot down. And so it was on May 29 of 1944. If we go back and look at his family, this I thought was kind of interesting, and that my heart kind of went out to his parents. So May 1944, they get word that their son was missing in action. In the mission report here, let's see, it mentions at the time we believed that none of these men survived. And so that was the word that his parents had received. And if we look also at his brother, who was in the military, Asa Aaron, he went by Aaron. Let's take a look at him. It shows his death was September of 1944. So the same year, they get word that he had passed away. So two of the boys, as far as the parents know, are gone. Their other son, Harold, had enlisted. Here's his enlistment records. So he was in the infantry, and he was serving. And if you remember the show or have heard about the show Saving Private Ryan, where two of the family members are killed, the government had a policy that was asking enough for the family, and they shouldn't have to lose any more. And so, from what I understand, and I may be wrong on this, but I believe it was Harold who was able to come home now because of two of his brothers had been, from what they know, had been killed in the war. And so it was pretty tough for the parents, I would imagine. Wow, what a sacrifice. So I wanted to just point that out before we go any more into Loren's history. I'm going to go over now the experience that happened here for Loren and being shot down and becoming a POW. I just wanted to throw that out first, though. Okay, I am going to do my best to tell the story of how my mission president became a POW. This is the plane that he was the pilot on, a B-24 Liberator. This is him. This is the co-pilot, Perskovich, who, by the way, had a contract. He was just drafted to play Major League Baseball at the time, and he gave up that, volunteered to join the Air Force. What some heroes all these men are. I will tell you, I don't know the names of all of them. This is, his last name was Perskow, and the other one who survived was Munir, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And so these four initially survived. What had happened that day, they went up, Stoddard here, my mission president, was the squadron leader, and the captain. And so they went up on a mission to Saipan. And on the way back, they had a successful mission. On the way back, one of his planes in the squadron developed some mechanical problems and fell back and was losing a little bit of altitude. And so Stoddard here fell back to provide cover for that plane. And so the two planes were separated. And it was at that point where it was 7 or 8 Japanese Zeros attacked them. And the plane that he was protecting actually made it back okay, but their plane was shot up. Engine number 1, engine number 2 were on fire. So the fire's coming out of here, it's burning. They were able to extinguish the fire. Then it caught back up on fire again the second time. And again, they were able to get the fire out. The third time it started back up and they were having some trouble, and they made the decision it would be best to ditch the plane, try to land it on water and hope for a rescue. At that point, though, with the plane on fire, they had also lost radio communication from the pilots here back to the back of the plane, and a couple of the crew members had bailed out over the water, and it was reported that they were, in their parachutes, and that they were attacked by the Japanese Zeros, and wasn't sure if they had made it safely to the water. But the rest of the crew, the other 8, stayed with the plane. The plane hit the water, and it sounds like the pilots may have been ejected. The plane ended up floating it was reported for 30 seconds before it sank. But 4 of the crew members were able to get into a raft, and they floated in this raft for 4 days until they were picked up by a Japanese boat. They were taken to a camp to where they would be interrogated. It sounds like tortured a little bit. Pascal, at the time of when the plane went down, he had some serious internal injuries, and with those injuries and the way they were treated, when they did make it to the POW camp, I think it was like 3 or 4 days later, he passed away, from his injuries. So 3 of them ended up staying in the prisoner of war camp, and they all survived. It sounds like from my research, roughly 25-30% of the men in those POW camps didn't survive. It was the practice then, when the soldiers in the POW camps were, when they died or passed away, the Japanese would cremate them. I've got a really cool story I'm going to read that my mission president's son experienced. It was such a good story. You're going to love it. It was about how he went back and was able to find the remains of Pascal. And so that is the story of how they became prisoners of war. Okay, here is a story from my mission president's son, Mark. This was dated May 25, 2015. I know nobody likes to hear people read, but I think you're going to love this story. It says, I publish this tribute to Ernie Pascal and hope someone in the Facebook world will be a member of Ernie's family and pass this on to the rest of his family. You see, he died in a POW camp in Japan, and his parents never knew where his grave was. This is the story of my search for that grave. In 1998, on Memorial Day, I stood in the rain at the Ofanu Railroad station just outside of Yokohama in Japan. I'd always heard that how Japanese were polite and many spoke English, but it's often unwise to rely upon conventional wisdom. Well, they were polite. Few spoke English, and my Japanese was non-existent. So I stood in the rain, watching the Japanese world go by. Then I spotted a middle-aged man with a child. I asked him by chance if he spoke English, and he said he did a little. I asked him if he knew where the World War II prison camp had been. He said he did not, and was surprised to hear that there might have been one here. He had been raised in Ofanu, and the subject never came up. He also couldn't imagine such a thing being so near Tokyo. I assured him it was, and he apologized for not knowing. I thanked him, and we went about trying to find someone in their 60s who might have lived here as a child during the war. A little while later, as I was asking more people if they spoke English, the man came running up, out of breath. He told me his wife had just arrived to pick him and his daughter up, and she thought she had heard of it. He invited me to come with them and find the spot. His wife said her English name was Lucy, and his was Guy. She was charming and spoke a little better English than he did. She asked if I knew details about the camp. I could also tell from Lucy's manner and questions, she really wanted to know why I would want to find a prisoner of war camp. I explained that my father had been a prisoner in Offenu, hope I'm pronouncing that right, during World War II. They both were very quiet and apologized for his suffering. They could have disappeared in that moment. If they could have disappeared in that moment, they would have. I told them quickly that my father loved the Japanese people. They were more shocked. Yes, I explained. He understood the difference between the political events and the people. It was the guards who were brutal. And I remember him telling me that. I told them of the days by the wire fence of the camp where the local people had come up to bow to them and offer greetings, despite their homes being firebombed nightly by the B-25s. They went about their business the next day, and part of that business was being hospitable to the American POWs. My father related many stories of kindness, as well as stories of shock of how the guards often ran outside of the fence and beat the villagers for their kindness. Still, they returned. That made Guy and Lucy smile and say that during war, much could not be understood. I then took out my father's book and read some of the descriptions. I'm sorry. I also love the Japanese. People have some really good friends. But that made Guy and Lucy smile and say that during the war, much could not be understood. I then took out my father's book and read some of the descriptions of the area around the camp. Lucy then said she knew exactly where the camp had been and drove to the spot. Just as my father had described, a hill suddenly rose up, covered with a dense forest. In the middle was a Buddhist temple, the same one my father had seen from his camp. I told Lucy and Guy that I had two reasons for being there. The first was to see the spot where my father had lived for 15 months, and the second, to find the grave of Ernie Pascal, my father's navigator, on his B-24 that had been shot down over Saipan while flying cover for a crippled plane. Ernie had had serious internal injuries, but somehow managed to survive the days in the raft after the crash landing, the days of torture in Saipan, the flight to Tokyo, and the torture and starvation in the Offenu camp. One day, it was all too much, and he died. The Japanese, by custom, cremated his body, but my father wanted him to have a proper burial. As commanding officer, it was his duty to see to the service. So he bribed the guards to take him to the Buddhist shrine where they might have some burial area. A young Japanese girl met him and said that she had a sacred spot up the hill. They wound their way through the thick forest to a little burial spot. There they spoke their words and buried the remains of Ernest T. Pascal, a brave fellow who died for his country. Dad said he thanked the young lady and wanted to give her a gift. Although he had nothing much to give, he offered her some items, but she refused and said it was but her duty to care for them. So I was there some 52 years later to find the grave that the Pascals had never found. Lucy went inside to see if someone there knew of a gravesite on a hill. She returned with an older gentleman and an older lady, both dressed in traditional Japanese clothing. They bowed and said they remembered the prison camp and offered their apologies. I assured them that none were needed. The gentleman said he remembered the burial spot, but he was too old to hike the hill. The quiet old lady said she would take us there. We wove our way through the formal gardens into the forest and up the hill. Soon we arrived at the little clearing where some stonemakers stood, and about 25 foot, where some stone markers stood, and about 25-foot high wooden stakes leaned up against trees. Each stake was about 3 inches wide and ornamentally carved at the top with Japanese characters gracing the face of the stake. She asked the name of the soldier, and I told her. One by one, we read the stakes. Finally, they read Ernest T. Pascal. I'd found his grave. The old lady said his name over and over. In broken English, she said, "Was your father named Loren?" Shocked, I said it was. She smiled. I remember him. He was most kind. He is most kind and gentle. He offered me gifts for helping him bury this young man. It was the young lady. She smiled. How is your father? Quite well, I said. On this Memorial Day, as I write, I remember Ernest T. Pascal, my father, the lady of the Buddhist temple, and the others who gave of themselves for others, especially to the families of those who died for our blessings of liberty. I remember you. Oh, sorry. That's the story. I'm going to just stop for a sec. Okay, I am back and I pulled myself together. Sorry about getting a little emotional there. Was not expecting that. It did remind me, though, I had to go grab my scriptures. It did remind me of something, and I want to just read this to you. It is in John 15, and it says, "Greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends." And you can really apply that to anyone who has served or currently serving our country. You guys are all my heroes. And so with that, I am going to try to wrap things up a little bit here. I'm kind of going on a little longer than I thought. I do want to just say one more thing about this. And I'm thinking, I'm, like I said before, on some other videos, I'm currently a senior service missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I'm trying to maybe magnify my calling a little bit here, and so I'm not doing any of this for any kind of monetary gain. I'm not set up to receive money from YouTube. I just want to help people come a little closer to their ancestors, give them some ideas about doing research and the fun stories that you can discover, the information that you can learn about people. I also want to try to do some things to get you a little closer to the Savior. I have a love for both family history and the Savior. And so with that, and what I've mentioned already about my mission president, and his crew, how much I love them and how, they sacrificed and, for the country. And I'm enjoying all the benefits of that sacrifice. And I asked myself, what can I do to pay back, these guys, these men and women who, whoever these heroes of mine are. And, they've already gone, what can I do? And so where I am, like I mentioned, the senior service missionary, I'm currently helping out in the Family Search Center, where we do family research and get people their family history and help them with that. And so, one thing that I can do, and this is what I have done already, is do some family history work for these guys. And so I'm just going to try to show this to you. This is, if you can, this may not work. And so anyway, I'm going to run this by real fast and then show you a picture. Did you get that? But this is what that was. What that was a poster of the airplane right in the center, right in the middle of the poster, and then from there, I had it branching out where all the men. You'll see on the picture. It's going to be too hard to explain. But what I did is I went in for each of those 10 guys. I went in and several of them, they weren't even in Family Search. And I set up, their records and started on their family history. I went back just for the sake of time. I didn't have time to do too many generations, but I went back on, for 3 generations on them. And I made sure I got several people added into their trees, tied in with families. If you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, you'll know that sooner or later we all are going to have a chance to hear the gospel, and that may or may not be in this life. It may be in the next life, but once you hear that, if you accept it, you'll need to have ordinances performed for you, like the Savior taught baptism. Everyone needs to be baptized. And so where you've already left the earth, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do. So that's done for you by proxy, in our temples. Like the Savior, he by proxy atoned for our sins. By proxy, we can help these other people who have not had the chance to have these ordinances. So family history and this family research is an important part of that. And so that is my belief. And that's one thing that I can do for these people is help them that way. And so I believe I am just going to wrap it up and just say happy birthday, President Stoddard, if you're listening in. Thank you for all you've done and for the great example. Hopefully I won't be seeing you for, hopefully I live as long as you do, but eventually we'll be together again. I'm positive of that. In the meantime, I know you went to the spirit world, maybe a half a year before my 2 missionaries, my dad and my son. I kind of explained that story on one of my other videos, but I do believe the gospel is being preached in the spirit world. If by any chance, I can only hope that you're somehow the mission president for my loved ones. And anyway, I appreciate you all, my family and friends listening in as long as you have. Sorry, I've gone on for quite a while, but for my kids, my grandkids especially, I want you to know of some things that are important to me and the people that have influenced my life. They are my greats. So thank you for your time.